Welcome to our podcast. This is Real Talk with Mary Contrary and Starfish. All right, welcome to today's episode. We are going to jump right into the Eroding Cyber Defense portion of the Project 2025 document that we've been covering. So this focuses on the Heritage Foundation's mandate for leadership, which we also call Project 2025. I just want to make sure both of those titles go together for this. So we want to talk today about the proposals to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and that is called CISA. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not familiar with that term personally. This is probably like the first time I'm seeing this term for cybersecurity. I mean, I just kind of figured the government had all these, they have all these branches of government with different agencies and, things to keep America safe and everything. So that's kind of what we're headed towards today. So Starfish, if you want to go ahead and lead us into kind of the timeline of events, just kind of like a little history of what CISA is and what they do, just so we can dive into this more and discuss what their proposals are on this and to see how it affects everybody.
Yeah, everybody.
Everybody.
Sure. Well, thank you, Mary Contrary, for that lead in. And indeed, I mean, the CISA isn't something I had heard about either until 2020 when I was following those, all of the court things and all the hearings and everything about the 2020 election. So I was like, what is CISA? So we all remember in 2016, well, maybe some of you don't, but in 2016, Hillary Clinton, when she lost against Trump, believed that there was quite a bit of misinformation from Russia. And we've talked about Russia on our podcast before.
Oh, yeah.
We did an episode on Maxim Yakubits. So we know that other countries try to interfere with our election. Obviously, they have a stake in it, and Russia specifically has a stake in it. We've talked about this before as well.
Yep.
But essentially, Russia did some pretty big misinformation campaigns at the time, and we didn't have an agency like CISA. So you talked about the government having lots of departments, and that's a lot of what the mandate for 2020 tries to argue is, well, listen, we already have this over here. We don't need it over here. So they try to make it seem so innocent, like we don't need the CISA. So, and just to kind of go backwards, in 2016, we had this big misinformation campaign about Hillary Clinton, specifically in the Midwestern states where she lost, where she was not expected to lose, Michigan, Wisconsin, those kind of areas. And so when they went to research to see what the heck happened, when Mueller, of course, you all remember Mueller did his big research report on this thing, they found out that the Russians had tried to affect the election. So they created the CISA in 2018. And so think back to 2018. Trump was president in 2018. So he created this thing as a way to stop misinformation, right? So it seemed like a good idea at the time, apparently, because they did it.
Yeah. I didn't know Trump created that. That's interesting.
Well, it was created during the Trump era. So it's just, it's like, well, yeah, let's create something. We don't want the China or any of these other countries to involve themselves in our elections. That sounds like a very logical thing.
Yes.
And the CISA is under the Department of Homeland Security. And so it's not like Trump was like, yes, we should do this. It's just like, it was created while he was president. Like the Department of Homeland Security was like, we should create this. So Trump just didn't have as much of an opinion about it at the time that I recall anyway. I didn't do a ton of research on that section, actually. So if anybody has any more information on that, that's good. But what I remember CISA for, so CISA's already created. So we have this great agency that is supposed to really just make sure that we don't have any foreign attack, so it's in the Department of Homeland Security. So, it doesn't make sense for it to be in the CIA or the FBI or the NSA, because those are domestic, right? This is an international problem, Department of Homeland Security. And so we have these foreign actors coming in and trying to impact our elections, and specifically they're doing it through cyber means, right? So this isn't just your typical hacking. This is like creating bots on Facebook. We all saw it. We all interacted with these bots. They just are crazy trolls. They go out and they go around trying to find people to upset. So fast forward to 2020, Trump loses the election, or, let's just fast forward to 2020.
Right.
Bill Barr at this point has said there's no fraud. We did the mail-in ballot episode. We did the Bill Barr episode about the DOJ, and during these hearings, this guy named Christopher Krebs comes out, and he's essentially the leader of the CISA, and he's like, listen, we still had, there was no cyber fraud that I can see on this, in this. So I don't understand why you guys are investigating this. There was no cyber fraud. Like, they kept thinking that the Russians hacked the machines. If you recall, there was so many theories out there just to try to get the 2020 election thrown out. Right. This guy, Christopher Krebs, had to come out and speak to Congress and say there was no threats like that. That there was a ton of misinformation, though. There was a crap load of misinformation still from Russia, regarding the candidates. So all these lies about Biden and anybody involved in Biden's campaign, it's just like Hunter Biden and the laptop, if you remember all that crap. There was some truth to some of it. I can't deny that there wasn't. But nonetheless, this agency is supposed to be independent again and work for us. And so, of course, in 2023, the Heritage Foundation added this as an item. Like I was saying, it wasn't in an earlier iteration of it. Trump got very upset that the CISA, specifically Christopher Krebs, went to Congress and said there was no fraud. There was none of that. There was misinformation. And Trump did not want to hear that, because that would mean that he was falsely elected. Right. Like the trolls were trying to get him elected again. So, and we know there was a ton of misinformation. There was QAnon. Remember that?
Oh, yes, I do.
There's so much stuff.
Oh my God. It was so weird. Yeah.
So that's a little bit of, he really hates the CISA. They do not want it. They really hate what the CISA did during the election, that they undermined their claims of fraud, and that pissed them off, basically. So they were like, well, no more CISA. We don't need you. In fact, they really hate the Department of Homeland Security in general.
I'm not surprised by that.
We will definitely go into that later, but that is another fascinating story.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
So I don't know if you know what the CISA is. I still didn't really, until I kind of did a little bit of research on this. I assumed I knew what it was.
Right. And honestly, it's just like, this thing is in place, I think, to really help secure people's personal information from getting out there on the internet. So it's very important, actually, to this country. I think, because there's a lot of countries that don't like America, let's just be honest. So they're going to do whatever they can, to break into our systems and steal our information and data. And so, they're a cybersecurity infrastructure, right? So they want to monitor all the threats. They have an incident response. The cybersecurity, they protect information sharing, and just infrastructure security alone. Because you think about this. Do you guys remember recently in the news, we had that whole thing happen with and this wasn't like a cyber attack or anything per se, but like like stuff like this can happen without an agency like this. When the airlines recently, like that update, that security update or whatever that happened with that major software, and it totally like threw off travel and like made everyone's life hell for like 3 weeks recently. I'm sure you
Mm-hmm.
guys remember that story. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that's why CISA is important to us, because it it keeps everything safe from that kind of like cyber attack on your personal stuff, because these hackers are good. They can get in
Mm-hmm.
and just wreak havoc on companies, people's personal accounts, information. I mean, I've get crap on my phone all the time, Starfish. I don't know if you do, just like where you'll get like a fraudy little link, to click on. Oh, your packages has an issue and
Oh,
we need more information. Like for like
hate those.
the mail the mail fraud stuff and things like that. So
Right.
I
Such a good
feel like
scam. I'm like, my package? Where? I need to go get it now. Crap. I don't have a
exactly.
package.
I
The hell
know
are they
exactly.
talking about?
Yeah, like, and there was one where it's like it catches you off guard because it's like I was expecting a package from a different company, and like they needed information. I'm like, wait a second, like this is kind of weird. Like they're asking for
Mhm.
all this info from me. So like,
They never do that. They never ever ask you for your info. They like, I always go to the main page and I'm like,
right.
wait a minute,
Oh yeah.
do I even have a tracking number for USPS? It was coming through FedEx. What the hell?
Right.
There's always
Right.
something sketch.
Exactly. And so that's why like CISA I think is a good thing. It's important. I
Mhm.
think originally they were like, oh, well, we just need to lock this all down, but now they want to control it, right? Like now they want to have control over that or dismantle it. And
Right.
I just don't think that's a great idea to leave the cybersecurity door wide open, especially in this day and age with, you know, AI coming in and all this other stuff that we're changing to. So,
100% terrifying. I mean, we
yeah,
did that episode on the fake president. You can imagine now, like, they can make a video that looks like Biden speaking and saying something that could easily be used to manipulate another country into doing something, or a militia or something. Who knows? And so AI is terrifying. So yeah, these people keep an eye on it, specifically the cyber stuff. I mean, Department of Homeland Security has been around since 9/11 now, but
right.
still, they keep an eye on it, and they look for domestic terrorists as well. I mean, domestic terrorism is one of the biggest threats we have in this country right now, which is another reason. And like I said, we'd go into DHS, but they don't like DHS because it calls them out as a threat, because they are one. They are a threat to national security. If you're gonna try to overcome the Capitol because you're pissed off about the election, that's a threat to national security. I mean, I'm sorry, but so
Right.
anyway, they find these things out by looking on boards, Reddit and Google, and you can see this stuff in Facebook pages. I mean, a lot of us saw it. I saw it all over Facebook. I'm like, this is freaking terrifying. They're going to go there and they're going to freaking try to get into the Capitol. Like I saw it. So
Oh yeah.
they're trying to keep an eye on this shit for all of us. And so that's their number one like goal, is to end misinformation efforts, like no QAnon, none of this BS.
Yeah.
Thank goodness that
Right.
has not happened in this election. I'm just
I know.
like,
Oh my God. That was so crazy. Like the last
so
election, like
bad.
all of that stuff. I was like, oh my God. All the conspiracy theories. And people were just like buying into all. I mean, it was like some like sci-fi thing from, the 1950s when they used to scare people with aliens.
Right.
Who was Orwell, wasn't it?
Person. Yeah, yes, yes. Yeah.
Like that's really what like modern time, like it was modern time of that is kind of what that felt like with all that crap going on the internet.
It was. I just remember rolling my eyes so much about the QAnon. We did a story on the QAnon thing because it was just such a big scam.
We have a special announcement for all of our podcasting friends and aspiring creators out there. If you're looking to elevate your podcasting game, check out blueberry.com. With their top-notch services, you can take your podcast to the next level. Plus, we've got an exclusive offer just for our listeners. Use the code STARFISH at checkout to get a special discount on your subscription. Don't miss out on this great deal. Visit blueberry.com and use the code STARFISH today.
But yeah, I mean, this document, this mandate for leadership project 2025, one of the biggest things is of the utmost urgency is immediately ending CISA's counter misinformation efforts. They want it to end. The federal government cannot be the arbiter of truth, is the quote.
Wow.
I mean, I don't disagree with that, but they can certainly say that's not true. You know, like, okay, think of aliens. Let's think of aliens. I know you believe in aliens. I think we all think the government's holding shit back about aliens.
Right.
I know this is a big Joe Rogan thing too. Like he's just psychotically into aliens and believes 100% they exist. Well,
right.
I mean, do we want the government to be the arbiter of truth with aliens? No. So I don't disagree with them on that. But also ending misinformation efforts. No, but I don't agree with that. If they take it too far. They always take it too far, you know.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, so if you ended that, let's just think of like the impacts on the American public of that alone, you know. So that could affect like financial institutions. That could affect Social Security benefits. That could affect healthcare information systems. If we just like open up the door, you know. So every single person will be affected by this. Like again, I like to emphasize with this whole segment that we're doing on the Project 2025 that, you know, this will affect every person. It does not matter if you are Republican, Democratic, Libertarian, grassroots, doesn't matter who you are, what you think or what you do. This will affect you.
For sure. It affects all the institutions, and even misinformation from those institutions is scary, you know. And having somebody come out and say, no, that is not true for an institution, let's just say a bank, you know, or the FDIC is, you know, what if some misinformation people would run to the bank and take all their money out? I mean, thinking about it like that.
Like, I mean, you'd have
it like,
oh yeah. I mean, that could crash the stock market, you know, to levels of like the 1920s, you know?
So their involvement in this is paramount. And I think, you know, it's just funny. It's like they don't want it there because, hey, don't stop us from spreading lies. That's how we win elections. That's how it feels, you know, like, hey, that's our main tool. Don't take that away from us. Oh, sorry. That's what we're going to do because you guys have really blown it. I mean, man, that like the QAnon thing just really capped it for me. Like, I am done with this shit. You know, this is bullshit. And this is a twerpy guy. We figured out who it was. Twerpy ass little guy in his basement doing this, just fucking with people the whole time, you know? And so it's like, come on. And everybody believed him because he was just so believable. You know, he's a smart guy. I don't even remember his name, Ron, something like that. Anyway, the guy, the 4chan's like kid, 4chan's the owner of 4chan, like his son did it. Anyway, not 100%, but pretty much. So yes. So yeah, we want to stop these crazy people from spreading misinformation about our agencies and this really impacts our democratic agencies because we don't want them saying that there's, you know, people in the basement of a Pizza Hut or whatever.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I remember all
Pizzagate, another dumb ass story. And then we did a story on that somebody ended up being killed because of it. I mean, it's scary, you know, like don't be stupid and believe this crap. It's just so easy to believe so much
I know.
junk out there now.
Yeah.
So the second thing that they want to do is we essentially specifically discuss this is just to really narrow the focus. I mean, this is just another way of saying we want to take away your responsibilities. We want you to focus on your primary missions and don't do any of this extra misinformation junk. That's not your core responsibility. They kind of essentially agree with the CISA's protection against some of these things, I guess, that we were just talking about, some of these other things that make sense. Like, we don't want misinformation going out there about, so we know there's a hurricane going on as we're recording this. And if you all recall, that the misinformation coming out about the hurricane back when Trump was president was that he said something like earlier projections said it was supposed to be in Alabama. Well, that shifted. Well, he kept saying it was going to be in Alabama, and the National Hurricane people to come out and say, actually, no, or the National Weather Service, no. It's not going to hit you, Alabama. Don't worry. And Trump was pissed. And so that's the whole Sharpie thing. Remember, he drew the line so that it hit Alabama on the fucking Sharpie on the map. I mean, CISA could help with something like that. Like, no. It's not going to hit you, Alabama. The fact that the National Weather Service had to come out and say it, and then defy the president and piss him off. And now they're on his list too. Of course, we all know that they're going to want to get rid of that too. So, and there's just so much to this. A lot of this is just broken hearts and hurt feelings. It's not really a logical thing.
Right.
So narrowing its responsibility. Second proposal. Yeah.
It's hard to find the logic in this document, Starfish, honestly.
Well, the logic is hurt feelings. You feel that. You feel it because you're like, oh, you were hurt by that the Weather Service came out and said, no, I'm sorry, but he's incorrect. And they call it Sharpie Gate. I mean, because he drew the Sharpie line. And Alabamans were seriously like, so should we be worried or not? Like, we trust this institution. But for Trump, it was more about pride that he was wrong. And he couldn't admit that he was just wrong. Oh, I apologize. That was an early report. Yep, I was wrong. That's all you have to say. And he could never, ever apologize. Never. It's like chronically unapologetic,
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
So they think CISA's role should be moved to the NSA. And like I said, NSA, gosh, I don't know. NSA is one of those weird agencies.
What is the NSA?
So I always think of aliens when I think of the NSA. So the NSA, let's just get their mission up. The National Security Agency is signals intelligence. The NSA provides foreign signals intelligence to our nation's policymakers. So it is a foreign agency. Okay. They're looking for foreign threats, but it's like a weird agency because no one really knows exactly what. I don't know. Somebody from NSA is gonna yell at me about this, I'm sure, but global monitoring, protection, processing of information and data for foreign intelligence and counterintelligence purposes. But I've never seen any counterintelligence information coming from NSA, which is weird. It always comes from the FBI or the CIA. The intelligence, I guess the NSA is the intelligence community, I suppose. I mean, I've worked in the intelligence community, but I didn't think of being as part of the NSA.
Okay. I see.
So
why would they want to transfer it to the NSA, the CISA, right?
Yes, they want to move it over there. And the understanding of all of these agencies and why they would want to move it over there versus where they have it is always kind of difficult to dig into. It's like, why there? They just say their argument throughout is to try to make government more efficient. And I don't think any of us can argue that the government is extremely inefficient. I mean, some of their proposals are quite interesting and I agree with. I'm like, I don't disagree with this at all. So moving things around, shuffling them around so there's a deduplication of effort is that is one of my favorite things to do. I can't stand duplication, but I feel like this is not an attempt to move them over for efficiency. It's an attempt to limit their powers so that they can't do this misinformation thing. Why wouldn't they
Oh,
just want to put NSA and DHS together then? I think they do want to get rid of the Department of Homeland Security, but I haven't gotten into that part yet.
yeah. Well, and yeah, like you said, they're basically moving. They want to move CISA over to NSA so that they could
Mhm.
take CISA's power away from like doing what
Yeah,
they're supposed to do. Is basically
right.
what
Yes, scoping them within the NSAs, which is ironic because again, they don't, Trump didn't accept intelligence information during his presidency anyway. If you recall, we straight up said, look, the Russians interfered with your election. And he was standing there with Putin and looked over and said, well, he said they didn't, so I believe him. So he didn't believe the American intelligence anyway. So to have
right.
another agency say, well, we agree with them, I think isn't a bad idea if you have it in multiple places. But DHS was basically created during 9/11. I mean, they felt like they needed to create a place to like find terrorists that the National Security Agency just wasn't doing. And so I get why it's the feeling of CISA being there can feel like, well, is this really the right place? But let's have that conversation. Let's not say, well, they hurt Trump's feelings during the election, so let's get rid of them, or let's bury him. That's what they
Or
want to
move
do
them.
is bury
Yeah. Yeah.
him. Mhm.
Yep.
It doesn't
Wow.
feel like an honest conversation. Yeah, and that's why I latched onto these stories is because I was like, well, yeah, he hated Christopher Krebs for coming out because Christopher Krebs is a Republican. So he expected every Republican to fall in line. He expected Bill Barr to fall in line, Christopher Krebs. There's more we'll talk about, but it's just disturbing that he's like, "Nah, I don't want you now."
Yeah, because you did that. It's like a child in sandbox mentality, you know?
Mhm,
It's just
mhm.
crazy to me.
It is. You can feel the fits that he has, if the fits, and um this connection to his platform is so obvious to me. I mean, Christopher Krebs said specifically that the 2020 election was one of the most secure in American history, one of the most secure. And so this really put him at odds with Trump. Just he really couldn't stand it, and his like desire to eliminate this agency would just is overpowering any kind of reasonable conversation. And it's just I wish I could hear what conservatives actually feel about this without his ego in the way. Because
Right.
his ego always gets in the way. It's like, do you
Right.
really think we should get rid of this? No, I bet you don't.
Right. Exactly. It's just another form of them to control the government and
Right,
to control um our lives, really, because it will affect us all.
right, right. Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, there's a little bit more to this, like you know, things that I don't disagree with necessarily. I mean, they really just want the CISA again, kind of focusing on their mission to educate local municipalities and not be a federal agency. So, a lot of this really goes along with their the 14ers, which is like states' rights, which we talk about, and wanting not the federal government to make a decision about whether a state has had fraud, but to allow the state to make that decision. So the CISA could provide training on what to look for so that they know when they find fraud, because they don't want the federal government to call a, a presidency, essentially, because they feel like these agencies, and we're going to get into this in the next episode and deep, because this is the most deeply disturbing part of this document. They don't want these people to not work for them and be their puppets. It's just this very strong vibe that they want yes men working for them. They don't want anybody in any of these positions to say no. If I want you, if I'm the president and I want you to say that there's fraud, you're going to say it, even if it's not true. And that's why I can't stand that man, is that it feels as though he's saying my way or the highway, period. And that's how the government should run. And that's
Yep.
the opposite of what we intended. Checks and balances are not that. So
Exactly. And that's what makes a democracy, by the way, not a dictatorship.
yeah, exactly.
So,
And there his desire to be dictator dad.
yeah.
Sorry, I just made that.
Maybe you should say dictator grandpa instead, Starfish.
Right.
Like,
Uh,
oh my God.
well, I was trying to alliterate with DD, but yeah, Donald the dictator dad, I mean, like he's just an icky old man who wants to run the country and thinks he can do it better than everybody. Typical mansplainer, right?
Right.
Typical lying, cheating SOB in every other way too. I mean, like I said, our audience here is not the Trumpers, but the people who listen to, who are Republican and who or like, not really political, and they don't really understand what's going on, and they don't really think that it impacts them, but it directly does, because they will never have a chance to vote again. Like,
Right.
period. He doesn't want you to be able to vote. He has said as much so many times. It's not even funny at this. It's just like, oh, you don't even need to vote. I can't stand it. He doesn't want us to vote. He doesn't want us to vote. He wants his people to vote. So,
right. Yeah.
So that's pretty much that. I mean, that is, eroding our cyber defense essentially by taking the CISA and making it more of a training program and more of a, narrowing the focus down to kind of the NSA, mission, making it a little bit less about elections. I think. I don't know that the NSA gets involved in elections, and I do think that the Department of Homeland Security's goal is more of a democracy goal mission to keep our democracy protected from foreign invaders, and not necessarily the NSA. I don't know, but democracy is always a big hot button issue when you come to foreign policy, which is definitely not my strength at all. Foreign policy.
Right.
But nonetheless, I mean, democracy is something we say to the world that we are good at, and we want to be, we want to be the people who spread the democracy around. And here we are undoing it. It's scary.
Yeah, absolutely terrifying. And I mean, I think this was another great episode of this document that we're breaking down. So in today's episode, we examine all the proposals of the mandate for leadership regarding the CISA, and highlighting the potential impacts of cybersecurity and election integrity with this too. Two very huge issues that we could end up facing if this man is elected into presidency with all these people. So I mean, well, the proponents argue for efficiency and reduced government intervention. Critics, and I mean, we're warning of the risks associated with privatizing all these critical functions, especially as they relate directly to our democracy, like you were saying. And so I just ask you guys, just please remember, as the 2024 elections approach, that these issues will continue to shape discussions about the future of our democracy and cybersecurity. So please stay tuned for our upcoming episodes. And until then, stay safe and stay informed. Thanks, everyone, for listening to Real Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen. We look forward to having you on our next one.